I'm afraid this shall pass. I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my mind.
My 600-Pound Life has produced some of the most jaw-dropping reality TV moments ever, and not just from one patient. From bedside fryers to scale-shattering weigh-ins, explosive family drama, and Dr. Now's toughest confrontations, these stories show just how far food addiction can spiral. Some patients push forward, others make excuses, and a few risk everything with dangerous habits that could turn deadly in an instant. Today, we're revisiting the craziest stories, the wildest, most unforgettable moments that left viewers shocked and proved why this show is unlike anything else. Marla. At 800 pounds, Marla took her obsession with eating junk food to a terrifying new level. She was so trapped by her addiction that she would set up a fryer next to her bed and start cooking chicken without ever standing up. There would be actual boiling oil sitting on a shaky table near her. This happened on season 3 of My 600-Pound Life. At 43, Marla would essentially set up camp in what we can only describe as the world's most hazardous fast food joint, complete with grease splatters on the sheets and enough junk food to stock a convenience store. Her family was not helping either. They were practically her personal DoorDash drivers. Her daughter explained how they always had to shop based on what she wanted to eat and not what she had to. And if they didn't bring what she wanted, she would be mad at them. Now, we are not sure what kind of tantrum someone who cannot move their legs can throw, but apparently it was scary enough that her family kept bringing boxes of cookies, chocolate bars, and enough burgers to feed a small army. She had a single bottle of vitamin gummies sitting among this processed food wasteland, which was almost insulting in its inadequacy. Marla said that she ate vitamin gummies because she loved the way they all tasted. She loved the way they made her feel. She knew that all the other food was killing, but not these gummies. Marla said this, capturing the cruel irony that anyone who has battled serious addiction understands. She absolutely knew what she was doing to herself, but knowing and being able to stop are two completely different things. Then came the scene that had viewers actually sobbing at the TV. Marla's daughter cried on television, tears streaming down her face because she was worried her mom was killing herself. Meanwhile, Mara's response was to grab more chicken and drop it into that sketchy setup of boiling oil balanced on furniture that belonged in a garage sale. The whole thing was a disaster waiting to happen. One bump of that ancient table and the viewers were going to witness third-degree burns on someone who could not exactly roll away from danger. Thederick. While Marla was frying chicken from her bed, the next patient had a different obsession. For Thederick, it was ice cream. And not just a scoop here and there, his whole day revolved around the sound of that ice cream truck pulling up outside. At 32 years old and weighing 740 pounds, Thederick was completely housebound, living with his mother, and the highlight of his routine was waiting for the music of that truck like a kid on summer break. The only difference was that he wasn't buying a popsicle. He was stocking up like a crazy person. His orders were always huge. He would buy multiple sodas, bags of chips, nutty butters, pies, and sandwiches. In short, he would buy enough to wipe out a week's supply in one go. And the crazy part is, Thederick had his own account with the ice cream man. No one ever does that. He was running up a tab with the neighborhood sugar dealer. Every morning without fail, Thederick was dropping $30 to $40 just on ice cream. And that was just breakfast. By lunchtime, he would eat pizzas, wings, cheesy bread, sodas, so basically a full catering order for one person. It is hard to even figure out where the money was coming from, because his daily food budget could have paid someone else's rent. The scary part was not just the food itself, but the routine. There was no break, no pause, no effort to stop. Just one endless cycle of deliveries and indulgence. Fans watching his episode were stunned because Thederick actually came across as likable, even charming. He smiled, he cracked jokes, he had a personality people connected with. That's what made it all so unsettling. This wasn't someone who didn't care. This was someone trapped, fully aware yet completely stuck. Even people online said the ice cream man was basically a drug dealer in this story, and honestly, they weren't wrong. Thedoric's addiction showed just how deep the grip of junk food can go. He had structured his entire life around one craving, and in his case, the ice cream truck didn't just bring dessert, it brought the only thing he had left to look forward to. While Thedoric was racking up a credit line with the ice cream man, Janine Mueller had her own way of chasing junk food, and it was one of the most shocking sights ever seen on my 600-pound life. Janine. Her story was told on season 6 of My 600-Pound Life. At 53 and weighing 621 pounds, she was battling obesity and also fighting a war against isolation, pain, and a sugar addiction that controlled every waking moment. What made her case particularly gut-wrenching was watching someone who had been completely abandoned by the world try to survive on her own terms, no matter how unconventional those terms became. Living alone with nothing but her cat for company, Janine's tiny apartment told the real story. Trash scattered across surfaces, laundry piled in corners, and the overwhelming sense that life had simply become too much to manage. Yet somehow she still managed to shower and keep herself clean. Her body hurt all the time, and she had constant pain in her joints. The morning started with an entire box of waffles before most people finished their first cup of coffee. And when her food supplies ran low, she faced a problem that would stump most people. She had no car, was unable to walk any meaningful distance, and still needed to eat. Her solution was to ride her mobility scooter straight through the McDonald's drive-thru. The drive-thru worker's voice would crackle through the speaker, completely oblivious to the fact that the customer ordering a 20-piece nugget meal was not sitting in a car. She was perched on a mobility scooter, desperately hoping nobody would stare. Janine said that McDonald's used to have those sideshows where you go and pay 10 cents to see the fat lady. Now all they had to do was wait and see if she would leave her apartment. So she would just try to get her food and get home as quickly as possible. The drive-through scooter runs became her lifeline to the outside world, even though each trip meant enduring stares from people who couldn't begin to understand her reality. Sure, McDonald's had accessible entrances, and yes, food delivery existed, but for someone living on what we assumed was a tight budget with limited mobility, that scooter represented independence, even if it came wrapped in public humiliation. Lupe. And now the next story shows us just how brutal obesity can get when even the most basic human need turns into a medical emergency. At 39 years old and weighing 642 pounds, Lupe's body was collapsing on itself. Because she was barely 5 feet tall, her weight pressed down harder than most people her size. Every organ was under strain. Her mobility was almost gone, and her husband Gilbert kept feeding into the problem, literally and figuratively. He pushed her around, catered to her demands, and kept her stuck in a cycle she couldn't escape. At home, she managed with a bedpan. It was humiliating, but at least it worked. But when she had to leave the house for doctor, Now's clinic, there was no hiding anymore. Lupe finally had to face her biggest fear, which was using a public toilet. What happened next was so shocking for everyone present at the scene. She squeezed through the doorway, lowered herself down, and the toilet cracked beneath her. The sound was enough to freeze everyone in the room. Lupe panicked instantly, sobbing and shaking, while Gilbert shouted useless instructions. Nurses rushed in, and for a moment it looked like the entire situation could end in disaster. Dr. Now worried her heart couldn't handle the stress. Every second she stayed stuck made things worse. Her cries grew louder, her breathing heavier, and the fear of her collapsing mid-rescue was real. Finally, after an exhausting struggle, the staff managed to pull her upright. The toilet seat was wrecked, Lupe was trembling, and the shame on her face said everything. A basic act of human life had nearly killed her. That was Lupe's reality. Even the bathroom had turned into a huge struggle. Amber. And if Lupe's humiliation happened in private, Amber's unfolded in front of an entire airport. At only 23 years old, Amber was one of the youngest patients ever featured on My 600-Pound Life. But her age didn't save her from the same crushing reality. Her body had broken down far too soon, leaving her barely able to walk, filled with self-hatred and trapped in a size she despised. Her trip to see Doctor now meant flying from Oregon to Texas. That meant facing airports, crowds, and the one thing she dreaded most, being seen. Disaster happened the moment she tried to rely on her wheelchair. The frame buckled and the wheel gave out under her weight. Staff barely moved to help, and Amber was left stranded in the middle of the terminal. The solution they came up with was almost cruel. She was placed on a luggage cart, the same one used for hauling suitcases, and she was pushed through the airport like cargo. Strangers stopped in their tracks. Some laughed, others pulled out their phones and snapped photos, turning her humiliation into entertainment. For Amber, it was heartbreaking. She already hated being in her own skin, and now she was being paraded in public as if she weren't even human. That day became one of the lowest points of her life, but it also lit something inside her. Because if there was one thing Amber refused to accept, it was being remembered as the woman rolled through an airport like baggage. That moment fueled the fight for her transformation. Stephen. Now, if there is one name that sends My 600-Pound Life fans into instant rage, it's Stephen Asante. He turned the show into a circus. At nearly 800 pounds, Stephen should have been focused on survival. Instead, he was ordering pizzas from his hospital bed, throwing tantrums like a toddler, and tormenting everyone around him. One of the most disturbing parts of his story wasn't even about food, it was about hygiene. During a meeting with Doctor, now Stephen reeked so badly that the staff were literally gagging in the hallway. The smell hit before he even entered the room. Dr. Now straight up asked him if he had ever heard of soap and water. It turned out Stephen hadn't bathed in weeks, and he casually admitted to having a rash under his folds that stank up entire rooms. Instead of fixing it, he sat there defending himself while people nearby almost vomited. Then came the golf cart incident. To move between buildings, Stephen perched himself on the back of a cart. With no straps or support, he predictably slid off, landing on the grass. You would think he had been hit by a truck. He screamed, clutched his arms, begged for an ambulance, and demanded painkillers. Nurses rolled their eyes. Even his own father doubted the fall, openly saying he thought Stephen staged it for drugs. And honestly, he probably did. That was Stephen in a nutshell. Dramatic, manipulative, and determined to make every situation revolve around him. He abused painkillers, pulled out his own hair, hurled urine on the floor, and screamed racial slurs at hospital staff. No patient in the show's history ever pushed Dr. Now's patience this far. And yet, for some reason, Stephen kept being given another chance. His story was almost infuriating. A man given every opportunity to save himself, but instead he chose to cause trouble for everyone around him. If Stephen was the most hated, Lisa was the most frustrating. Lisa. At 49 years old and tipping the scales at nearly 700 pounds, Lisa had already reached the point where every part of her life depended on others. She couldn't bathe herself, couldn't walk on her own, and lived in a house literally reinforced so she could be wheeled out to see Doctor. Now. You would expect someone in that position to fight for their life. Instead, Lisa did the exact opposite. From the moment she arrived at the hospital with her boyfriend Herbert, red flags went up. She cried, she complained, and she claimed she wasn't losing weight, even while secretly sneaking junk food. Dr. Now wasn't fooled for long. During a routine check, he noticed candy wrappers and fast food bags hidden in her bed. When confronted, Lisa and Herbert flat out lied, blaming each other and swearing they had no idea where the food came from. It was insulting, like they thought Doctor now couldn't see through the obvious deception. The truth was hard to ignore. Lisa's folds were rotting with fungal infections, oozing and blackened from years of neglect. Nurses described wiping her down only to find layer after layer of filth. And then came the shocking revelation. It was Herbert, the same man pretending to care for her, who was sneaking food into the hospital. He kept feeding her burgers and fries while she lay in bed, claiming she wanted to change. The scene was maddening to watch. Dr. Now warned her point blank that she was running out of time, but Lisa refused to take responsibility. Every excuse and every tear felt like a performance to avoid doing the hard work. Viewers were outraged, not just by her lack of effort, but by the sheer waste of an opportunity that so many other patients would have killed for. Lisa's story was infuriating because she had every tool and every chance, and she threw it all away. Instead of fighting for her life, she clung to the very habits that were destroying it. So what do you think is the problem here? Why is it that so many of these patients cannot give up the very habits that are killing them? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like these, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We will come back with more. Goodbye for now.